Hello everyone, I'm Mojtaba and welcome to my channel. The chemistry job market in North America, particularly in Canada, is the topic of this podcast. If you are a chemistry student, you may find this episode interesting. In June 2024, the CSC conference, Canadian Society for Chemistry, was held in Winnipeg. While browsing the program, one of the plenary talks caught my attention. The title was "A Compass in the Wilderness: Networking for Chemistry Job Seekers and Finding Paths to Your Desired Career" by Chemjobber. It turns out that Chemjobber is a blogger who mainly writes about the chemistry job market. I contacted him and arranged a friendly conversation to discuss his blog. In this episode, you'll hear about the chemistry job market in North America, entrepreneurship, what you can do during your program to improve your job prospects after graduation, and more. Please stay tuned and listen to my conversation with Chemjobber. Thank you so much for your time, and please tell us more about yourself. Who is Chemjobber?
I'm a former process chemist. I got my PhD around 2007, was a postdoc in industry, and then went to look for work in 2008 while I was a postdoc, and found that to be a very long and painful experience. Because it was in the middle of a recession or the beginning of a recession. And that is when I began thinking about the question of quantification of the quality and or quantity of the job market. My favorite analogy for this is sport. If you are a cricket player, or if you desire to be a cricket player or a football player, or a basketball player, you know the odds. To use an analogy from American football, there are 32 professional teams. There are 32 quarterback positions. You know exactly how many openings there are. And you know whether or not you are entering the draft in a good or a bad year. For example, a good year for a young quarterback, there are, I don't know, 10 potential openings for quarterbacks, and in a bad year, there's only 2. And even though the math is astronomically small, there are many more high school quarterbacks or college quarterbacks. There are many more aspiring high school quarterbacks than there are professional spots. We have no sense of the mathematics around the probability of any one chemistry position. And that was the first approach I took to what I would produce for social media, which was the beginnings of my blog.
I agree that this is the concern of, I think, all of the graduate students or undergrad students. What will happen next? And you faced it, and you just started to help others, right? To see what will happen to them in the next step by posting these job postings. And
Yes.
how has it changed through these years? I mean, you said at the time the recession was a problem. I think it's been 16 years, right?
Yes.
How has it changed the job market?
I would say the first thing to note is that over the years since 2008, we still do not have what I believe to be a trustworthy measure of the quality of the industrial job market. For the academic job market, I think that my partner, Andrew Spaeth, and I have done an okay job at attempting to quantify all available tenure track positions in chemistry in academia and in the US and Canada. And there, I think we have a sense of what happened. And there, basically from year to year, the job market is flat. There's not that much difference between the numbers that we found in when we started the list in 2016 and now. There was 1 year that was very different than all the other years, and that's not particularly surprising, which was the 2020-2021 year. So the hiring for the fall of 2021 was very, you can see a dramatic difference in the number of available openings.
It increased or decreased?
It decreased by about 200.
Or maybe because of the pandemic was around,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
We believe that it was because of the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
So at this point, what's your evaluation on the uh, job market for chemists?
In December of 2021,
Yeah.
I predicted that we had reached the so-called the hiring boom. That in 2020, surprisingly, while I predicted, this will not be a good year for industrial hiring, I believe I was wrong. The farmer market was very, very, very strong in the US. And I believe fall of 22 was basically the peak. And then from that point, or excuse me, fall of 20, we'll say fall of 21 was the peak. And then 22 was arguably equally strong. And then 23 was less strong than 22. And 24 will be less strong than 23. But the problem is that this is all a relative measurement. And we really don't have a good enough sense, and we still don't have a good quantitative measurement that I trust.
I was about to ask, how do you measure it, you know?
It's extremely difficult because you would have to have some sense that you can accurately capture 90% or 95% of all the available job openings. In a year, there are hundreds of them, if not thousands, that are relevant to chemists in the United States and Canada. In Canada, claim on the top number that there are 32,000 chemists in Canada. And I'm genuinely skeptical of that number. My guess is that, well, other places, if you add all the numbers up between the provinces, it's something more like 20,000. Anyway, and in the US, it's somewhere around 90,000 chemists. Might be 100 by now, I'm not sure. How much job turnover / growth is there? And the number is somewhere around 5 to 6%, depending on how it's measured. And so that is what, 7,000 positions. And I am very happy I would be very happy to attempt to quantify 7,000 advertisements, but I mean, that's just an impossible task to do by hand.
Yeah.
Which is what we do for the faculty positions.
Do you have any idea about other majors? I mean, engineering, biology, and just in order to compare it.
That is an interesting question. So I'm going to throw some numbers off the top of my head, and I will indicate for you the accuracy, my comfort level with the number. So the United States has the survey of earned doctorates that's put in front of basically every new research doctorate that is granted in the United States. So if you get a PhD, you're supposed to fill out the survey. That says they claim to have a 90+% response rate. That claims or that survey says that the United States graduates about 3,000 PhD chemists a year. Canada, we don't really know the number, but I think I saw some data to indicate it's in the 1,500 a year range. Don't know if I fully trust that because I'm less good at this. The number of PhD biologists in the United States is a lot higher. It's more like 8,000 a year, 6,000 a year. It's a big number. And so that is, and then for engineering, it's smaller. So that 8,000 number for the biologists. That's like uh, all health sciences or all that's actually not all health sciences. That's all life sciences, as opposed to the physical sciences. So physics, biology, or excuse me, physics, chemistry, geology. Uh, um, that's kind of lumped together. But and then the engineers, it's actually PhD engineers, it's actually a little bit less than the chemists, if I recall, or right around par. So for 2022, which is the latest year that we have data for, there were 2,782 PhD chemists graduated in the United States. And then for the PhD engineers, overall, 10,763. That's all engineering fields. And it's very interesting. Oh, that is interesting that it's basically it's very even among they all average around 12 or 1,300, except for electrical engineering where it's 2,100. And then for biology, all biologists, it's 9,386.
So what's the conclusion here? So considering the number of the graduate students.
Yeah, I would say the conclusion here is that chemistry is one of the larger fields, but is not the largest field by far, which I believe reflects a couple of different aspects of things. I would say that one, it reflects the willingness of the US, the Congress, basically, the US government, to fund research in chemistry or research that chemists can apply for funding for at the PhD level, at the large research institution level. And then the other aspect of it is it reflects the fundamental nature of chemistry in basic science education, and a significant plurality, I would say, not a majority, but a plurality, end up working at smaller institutions where while they have a subsection of their students who are bachelor's chemists who will go on to either a job in industrial chemistry or further graduate work in chemistry, I would say the majority of those students are probably not chemistry majors. But in the United States in particular, you are required, if you are applying to medical school, you're required to take 2 years of chemistry. And I suspect that provides a significant source of tuition dollars for chemistry departments.
Yeah. Did you include biochemistry in your numbers, or that was just chemistry?
That's actually an interesting point, which is that biochemistry is considered separate for the survey of earned doctorates. But so that 2,700 number, that excludes the biochemists.
Okay.
If you were to add the biochemists in the overall number, which is also interesting in that biochemistry is lumped in with the biophysics and molecular biology. So I have actually no idea how many biochemists graduate every year. Actually, I could figure that out. But
Okay.
yeah, but I would presume that molecular that molecular biologists are a very large portion of that 1,500 number.
So can we compare the situation of the chemists in Canada with Europe or uh, Asia, somewhere else in the world, and see what's the situation over there?
That's an interesting question, and the core problem is, and this is something that's very interesting and very grand, and something that deeply I would love to do, but I simply do not have the time. I'm gonna uh, state one of my most common things by asking you, Mujtaba, where are you from?
I'm from Iran.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite analogies. Both of you are, I believe, currently residing in Canada.
Yes.
So both of us know McGill. Both of us know the University of Toronto.
Yeah.
My father, when I was growing up, because my father worked in Canada briefly, my father said that McGill was the Harvard of Canada, and I'm sure it was true in the 1970s. I don't know if it's true in 2024. So tell me, what is the Harvard of Iran?
I think University of Tehran.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So for my father, in Taiwan, the best university is called National Taiwan University. I don't know if it's still the case, but 50 years ago, that was the case. And then University of Toronto was known as the MIT of Canada. I don't know if it's still the case. What is the MIT of Iran?
I would say Sharif University of Technology.
Okay, which I've seen quite a number of chemistry papers from that university. For the rest of the world, let's just pick China. I believe, I could be wrong, if you were to get 100 Chinese people from China in a room, they would tell 80% or 50% would tell you that the Harvard of China, to flip it around, the Beijing University of the United States is Harvard University. Uh, uh, but then the core question that we really should be asking if we're attempting to quantify things is the United States has 2 or 3 universities off the top of my head who produce basically a large portion, 5%, 10% of the PhD chemists. So I'm going to throw 3 off the top of my head. University of Florida, uh, Ohio State University, and University of Michigan in the United States. 3 universities that are, first of all, the university itself is very large. And then secondly, the chemistry department is very large. There's, 50 plus, I don't know how many faculty members there are. Many. I went to a university with about 20 faculty members. I'm sure University of Florida has many more than that. And then they graduate more PhD chemists per year than many other universities. And the real question is, what is the Ohio State of China? And my answer is, I have no idea. And this is the sort of stuff I would love to know and love to be able to quantify. But then you begin to get into the second question of I don't read Chinese because these statistics I'm sure are public, but I don't read Chinese well enough to understand. And then again, the second point is that I don't understand the educational system in each country well enough to quantify trust in a trustworthy manner. Because again, I barely know anything about Iran, which is and its educational system, which Iran is a very large country. It's not a small country, and it produces many scientists and engineers. But I would say probably more in the United States than, for example, Europe. There's very little understanding of the structure of the educational system in Iran. And
Yeah.
then so when you ask about the situation, that's a very broad term, situation. But
Yeah.
I can't even, it's like saying, describe a person and say, well, I think they have two hands and 2 feet.
Yeah, that's true.
To kind of complete my thought, which is that two things. One, the quality of the job market is basically dependent on each country and their funding for the two basic places.
Mhm.
Well, the basic place of or the basic structure of how the government funds education. So if you make the assumption that most of the academics work for public, not private institutions, then the real question of how many professor openings are there is really about how well does chemistry and or science, how well is that funded by the government? And that's going to be A, different for every country, and B, change from year to year. And then secondly, the the other place that chemists tend to go is industry. And then what I know from the United States, I believe, don't know for the rest of the world, is is the likelihood or is so the technical way to refer to this is chemistry employment pro-cyclical or anti-cyclical? In other words, as the broader economy grows, does chemistry employment grow? And then as the broader economy shrinks, does chemistry employment shrink? And the answer, so far as I can tell, uh, by some studies I've seen, is that industrial chemistry employment is what's called pro-cyclical, or scientist employment in general, that it rises and falls with the economy. Then you get into the question of, is this true for the rest of the world? And the answer is, I don't know. It is worth noting, for example, that broadly speaking, so there's two other aspects here that I should know. Number one, the United States, I suspect, has a larger proportion of pharmaceutical research positions in industry than the rest of the world, and that is primarily because of two things. One, the structure of the American healthcare system, and B, America has a larger proportion, I suspect, of the world's life science researchers. So those two things combined together to mean that many, of the positions that uh, I'll choose a company, Novartis. That Novartis is a Swiss company, but either a plurality or a majority or a significant minority are in the United States of its scientific R&D positions, and then proportionally the chemists.
Mhm.
We don't know what the relative proportion is for the rest of the world, for Europe or for Asia. And then the other thing I will note here, which is that what does it mean for non-pharma chemistry R&D? And there, it's a very interesting question, because many years ago, I would say, well, a significant proportion of those positions are probably in Europe. But I would say, since the pandemic, and then B, the war in Ukraine, it feels like, and I emphasize the word feels very strongly, it feels like Europe, um, especially the German chemical industry, has been suffering very significantly. The
Mhm.
prices have been very high, the profits have been relatively low. And it would be interesting to know. And of course, this again is one of these places where, as an American, I don't feel qualified to make a judgment about the quality of the German chemical employment market. It
Mhm.
seems to me that things are not going well. But in the United States, if you are a large chemical company, so the largest being both Dow and DuPont, and your profit is not going well for the year, the American stock market will basically force you, if you are a large public, what's called publicly traded company, it will force you uh, to lay off some employees, to cut costs. Uh, the German market, I believe, is different, and the lag is longer because it's just one, I believe, attitudinally, and this again, I am speculating, that the German system basically attempts to hang on to its scientists uh, longer. And then the other thing is that European law is more biased in favor of the employee, and it is less easy to remove somebody in full employment at your organization, within your organization.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for this comprehensive
That
explanation.
was a very long answer.
Yeah, yeah, I liked it. I think my next question is about the entrepreneurship. We usually hear about how we can find a job. It
Mm-hmm.
rarely happens someone talks about starting a business. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, in your opinion, whose responsibility is to promote the entrepreneurship? University, faculty members, government? What do you think about it?
Oh, if I would say, and this gets deep into philosophy, I suppose, I would say that it is the responsibility of the government and the school to promote an environment where entrepreneurship can happen. And then I believe that it's up to the individual scientist to decide whether or not they will choose to become entrepreneurs. More so than it used to be, it is a risky endeavor. I believe it's risky in the sense that, or more risky now, in the sense that in the United States, for example, interest rates have gone up,
Mhm.
which means that it is harder to borrow money, which means that in order to start a company, you may have to get your own money involved. Whereas 10 years ago or 15 years ago in the United States, interest rates were much lower. And the likelihood of, and I'm these are just purely made up numbers. Let's say to start your company, you decide you need $250,000. Your organization or your funders may require you to put in 5,000 or 10,000 or $50,000 of your own money just to say you too are involved. And it depends, I don't know about you and your personal financial situation, but some number, we all agree that it would be unwise for if you and I were to join together in a partnership, and if I put in $9,999 and you put in $1, there is a imbalance there that is, if you decide to harm the company, I am more impacted than you are. I don't really fully understand how entrepreneurial funding works, but I do know that the expectation is that one, the funder, between the funder and the majority or the minority shareholder, oftentimes the scientist does not have the most money, but they have the most time. And then there's a small portion of money that's put in to basically uh, make that person realize, I am financially involved in this as well. And so I think that I suspect that nowadays the barrier, the amount required from the founder may be higher. And because the interest rates in the United States are higher. I genuinely don't know what that looks like for Canada or for Europe or Iran for that matter. But I do know that in the United States, entrepreneurship is still, from an academic perspective, especially at the R1 institution level, it's very much encouraged.
What do you think about the Canada?
It would be interesting to survey Canadian academics and wonder how they feel. It's pretty clear that there is at least some, right? Alan Asbura-Gruzik is involved in a company um, at the University of Toronto.
So, yeah, my follow-up question was how easy it is to start a company in Canada. I mean, for chemists, definitely. So somehow I think you covered it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean that the real answer that I should give there is I have no idea.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, but I do think they exist, which means if one person can do it, many people can do. But at the same time, I believe that it's like every other entrepreneurial uh, endeavor that you have to have an idea,
Mhm.
you have to have persistence and adaptability, and then uh, you also have to be lucky.
Yeah, that's important. Do you think an undergrad student just needs to have GPA A or A plus to get into the job market? How about the other skills?
I'm not even actually sure in the United States that's true. I would say that um, grades are helpful, but the most important thing is to have um, laboratory skill. You're being hired for your skills,
Okay.
for your probably more for your hands than you are for what's between your ears. But at the same time, you're probably an undergraduate student is probably less skilled. And so they are looking for your ability to learn, which, of course, may be reflected by your grades.
I have somehow a personal question, but the answer would be helpful for most of the people who are listening. If you could go back 10 years ago, uh, what would you do differently? I would say more than 10 years then. 20 years. If you could go back 20 years in your situation, what would you do differently during your undergrad program to find a job easily?
Mm, that's a very interesting question. I would say I have to confess that when I was an undergrad, what I wanted was to become a medical doctor. Uh, so I think I would have tried harder there. I like to think that my junior and senior year, I was a fairly serious student. I would say I probably would have tried even harder in the lab.
Hmm.
Is
More
uh,
skills, right?
yes, yes, yes. More productivity in the lab.
Okay. For the last question, do you encourage a high school student pursue their degree in chemistry or not?
That's a good question. I would say I am very hesitant to pick a specific field for anybody. And because ultimately, when you offer a specific field for a large group of people, you're basically making a prediction. And I will say this that any field to predict beyond 5 or 10 years is basically, and especially for a high school student, uh, you're asking for a prediction of the economy 5 years from now. And the answer is, I have no idea. And
Mhm.
anybody who's telling you what the economy in 5 years, they say they will know accurately. With the exception of very prominent academic economists, I would say they're lying. And even then, the academic economists are probably guessing. And it is fascinating to listen to prominent economists make a prediction because they're very good at making a very vague prediction, but making it seem very specific. I think that the fundamentals of a chemistry degree are still valuable for the employee.
Mhm.
Uh, if a good fundamental chemistry degree will have analytical analytical chemistry, it will have physical chemistry, it will have some biochemistry and sufficient amounts of organic chemistry, and then the associated laboratory skills. These are all difficult quantitative fields that require knowledge of mathematics and the ability to solve problems. The real difference is between a chemistry graduate in 1970 and a chemistry graduate in 2024 is that the market, unless you're a chemist looking for chemists, the market does not view a chemistry degree as being at the forefront of science as other fields. It would be very interesting to know at what point in the 20th century did chemistry degrees as a proportion of all science degrees peak. And my answer is I genuinely don't know. But I suspect that there are many more computer science graduates now than there ever were. So were basically zero computer science graduates in 1940, and now there are many, many thousands. I very much hesitate to say follow your passion because I think that that's too easy. But I think that a chemistry degree will still teach you the things that you should know. But whether or not it will set you up to have the highest salary, I can almost guarantee the answer is probably not. And that is something that everybody in the field, I would say, both academics, the students themselves, and then the industrial folks, should really ask that question. Is this a problem? And if it is a problem, which I think it's at least a small problem, what should you do? Why is amongst the three fields, the three basic fields, chemistry, biology, and physics, I would say I suspect that physics has the highest median salary for its graduates. And there's, of course, a bunch of different questions. Number one, why is that? And number two, is that a function of demand or supply, that the supply of physics graduates is low, therefore the demand is high, or if it's just there isn't as much intensity of demand for chemists or biologists for that matter. I have no idea. But so my answer to your question is at best a qualified yes for high school students. If you really like chemistry, yes, you should get a chemistry degree, but you should recognize the relative position of chemistry in the broader academic fields.
Is there any other thing that you would like to share? I didn't ask and you think it could be helpful?
Genuinely, I'm a little bit sad, and at the same time, we are all subject to scarce resource. I've genuinely like helping younger chemists with understanding the data around chemistry employment. But one, I am subject to the scarce resource of time. And two, I am subject to my personal discomfort with other fields where my knowledge is less good than, for example, my understanding of the academic chemistry market in the United States, where I feel very confident in making predictions, or at least I have the data to make a reasonable prediction. But for the rest of the world, I genuinely have no idea. And most of the time I think, that's okay, because you're concentrating in what your main purpose is. But at the same time, there are many other chemists in other parts of the world, and I would like to understand their systems. Amusingly, I was speaking with my daughter who is in her teenage years, and the other day, and I said, "Well, don't let me be a crabby old man when I retire." And she said, in response, "I think that when you retire, you'll be doing more Chemjobber work." And I said, "I think you're right." uh, and so I look forward to the day when I can understand other chemistry job markets as well.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Okay, okay. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights, inputs. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Goodbye.